Welcome to Inspire Me with Jay, a podcast focusing on meditation, the near-death experience, and all things spiritual. Hello, this is Jay with Inspire Me with Jay. My special guest is Wendi Friesen. Wendi, how are you?
I'm doing great. Another good day in paradise because I live in Hawaii. So I'm always enjoying and being very grateful for where I am.
So what exactly do you do?
I've been a hypnotherapist for 28 years. Before that, I had many strange and unique professions, such as being a glassblower for a few decades and doing acting in San Francisco. I was an actress and just many things, but I love being a hypnotherapist. It's been extremely rewarding. So I get to travel all over the world and speak at conferences and see clients in other countries, and just really fun.
So like when you did acting, were you actually in movies or TV?
No, just plays, like plays in San Francisco. One of them I was in, it ran for many months and we had 6-7 shows a week, something like that. It was just so fun. It was a musical and it was like the best thing you could do and get paid for it.
So what are you most passionate about?
Well, mostly I am passionate about the work that I'm doing for people that don't know how they can change some major problem in their life. And so I do specialize in drug and alcohol treatment and using hypnotherapy. And very few people have even heard of using hypnosis for drug or alcohol work. And when I started looking into this as one of the things to add to my practice, I thought, there's no way, I'm not an expert in drugs and alcohol. But when I started working with clients who had given up and they knew that nothing would work because they kept failing and failing, I learned something really huge, in that hypnotherapy is probably the most effective thing you can do to quit drugs and alcohol, especially without struggling and without relapsing.
So like, do you do any particular type of hypnotherapy or just hypnotherapy in general?
Yeah, well, there's a difference between a lot of hypnotists will do just basic hypnosis, and they might, put you in trance and then give you direct suggestions. When they give you direct suggestions, they might be accepted by your mind or not. But what I do is different. With hypnotherapy, I would take someone into the future. Let's say, imagining you're going a year into the future and you haven't had a drink in a full year. You feel really good about yourself. Your life is working. And tell me what else you're experiencing in this future when you're so strong and healthy. And then they're building a memory in their brain that is about being strong and healthy, feeling good. And our brains accept these memories as being real. So our brain feels that this is actually really happening.
Mm-hmm. That's kind of like sometimes in self-improvement, you'll see things about like visualize where you want to be, see yourself already there, get a picture in your mind to change.
Right. And this has to also be in alignment with your own values and your beliefs about who you are. So if you still have a belief that you're a failure, that you're no good, that your dad always told you you'd amount to nothing, then you go into this kind of self-hypnosis and tell yourself these affirmations. They're going to conflict with what your inner self believes and what you've learned from your upbringing and from your mistakes and your failures.
Was affirmations a big part of what you do, what you recommend?
It can be, but I think most people who want to use affirmations, they need to understand how they're wrestling with their deeper beliefs and their limitations. So let's say you want to lose weight and you had a weight problem for years, and you failed at all the diets you've tried, and you decided, I don't have any willpower, I don't have what it takes, I'm just always going to be fat or whatever. And you decide to use affirmations saying, okay, I'm going to be thin, I'm going to be fit, I'm going to be exercising every day. But this conflicts with the beliefs you have internally. So we wouldn't want to create this statement, which becomes a lie to your inner mind, and it will not let you have that success. And people who are good at hypnotherapy know how to release the old statements and the old beliefs and all of those things that we learned from the time we were born.
Well, I had heard that the bigger issue with drug and alcohol addictions, even bigger than the chemical dependence, might actually be the lack of connection that people have. Because a lot of times you find people that have drug and alcohol addictions have an issue of connection. And I always kind of wonder why. Maybe that's why things like AA meetings are so successful for some people, because they get a sense of community, like they feel connected to these other people.
Yeah, and that is such a big deal. And that's one of the reasons that AA does work for some people. Unfortunately, the longer term success rate of it is only 3 to 5%, which is the same percentage as if you do nothing and you just try on your own. So in that community, it's very important that you do have that kind of community to support you and encourage you. But it still has a really low success rate. And some of it is because of the principles and the beliefs that we were just talking about, your internal beliefs that you repeat to yourself and to them when you're in meetings, and the things that you're supposed to believe, like you're an alcoholic and you'll be an alcoholic for life. Well, with my work, you're not an alcoholic if you quit drinking. You're someone who's strong and healthy and in control. So instead of saying, hi, I'm Annie and I'm an alcoholic, everybody says, hi, Annie, and say, I've been sober for 4 years and I'm an alcoholic, whatever. To continue to reinforce your label as an alcoholic could be disempowering. For those out there who it's worked for, awesome, that's great. But just understand that there's some things that are, like they say, you're just one drink away from being a drunk. If you don't drink, you're a dry drunk. You can't hang out with people who drink, with normies, because that's going to make you relapse. And there's a lot of belief about what's going to make you relapse. So what I did that is so cool, and this has worked for people who have given up and were sure that nothing would work, is with the hypnosis, I made a person, when they see alcohol or they hear someone talking about alcohol, or even notice others that are drinking, this is going to trigger that place in you that you're strong and healthy and in control, and it's going to make you feel good because you just don't need it. It's just not a thing. So now you're not struggling with this. You know that it's something that you just don't do. So we took all the pressure off of it. And here's what happens. This woman stopped me in the grocery store and she said, oh my gosh, Wendi, I have to tell you what happened. My husband used your alcohol freedom program. And she says, he hasn't had a drink in months, but he's so happy about it. Now, when we have company over, he's the bartender. He pours the drinks for everybody, but he doesn't even need a drink. He doesn't feel like it. It's just not a thing. Another woman told me she had quit only a month ago with my program, and she was sitting in the bar drinking her club soda at a hotel conference. And her friend came and sat down next to her, who did not know that she had quit drinking. And her friend bought her a glass of scotch, her favorite scotch, waved it under her nose. When she smelled it, she says, Wendi, I knew, it had no effect on me. It's no big deal. I don't drink. That's all there is to it. It didn't trigger any fear or any desire or any conflict. She said no. And it actually made me feel really proud of myself.
So is you're basically reprogramming the belief system in what you're doing? Is that?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And it sounds like something that.
And we're changing it so that. Oh, that belief system triggers a different experience. But when you're in AA or rehab or 12-step, since that isn't part of it, you can't access that feeling. If you're my client and I take you a year in the future and we build these beliefs about who you are, and we also build them 6 months in the future, and 3 months in the future, and have you accessing and feeling and experiencing these, then your brain and your body can actually access those feelings and those strengths and that automatic, just like that, trigger that feeling that's like, wow, I'm strong and healthy and in control. That's who I am.
Hmm. Well, is the big issue that, you know, a lot of psychology and AA, they have a lot of good ideas in terms of a surface level, but you're saying maybe you need to go to the subconscious at a deeper level to sort of reprogram. You can't do it all at the surface. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, it is. And, the other part of it is when you go to the meetings and, if it's worked for any of you out there, awesome. I'm really, really happy for you. Just notice if you're struggling or you feel like your life is limited in some way because of what you've learned. But when you go to the meetings, you're doing what is important in hypnosis, which is repetition. You're hearing the repetition of all these sad stories, which you're internalizing and relating to your own life. People who are really struggling, talking about all the people they've hurt, all the mistakes they've made, the jobs they've lost, and everything in their life. And we tend to identify with these stories. So our brain is now getting the repetition as a listener to all of these mistakes they've made and accessing our own and continuing to keep those fresh. And I'm sure this hits a chord with your listeners, whether they think that's ridiculous, that's the stupidest thing, AA is great, it's the only way, or those who have failed at it and say, oh man, that's probably why I just couldn't get past it, because I kept hearing everybody's sad stories. Now, I don't know if you know this, but you're supposed to go to 90 meetings in 90 days. And so you're going to hear sad stories for 90 days, which is just, that's a tough way to try and get better. But anyway, other than alcohol, there's 1,000 other things that hypnosis is really good for.
Hmm. So is it something to where someone could use hypnosis and go to AA just for the support, or would you recommend that if they're doing the hypnosis and the programming, they don't even need AA? It's not going to be helpful.
Yeah, well, I don't want to discourage anybody from going to AA, because if that's where they feel they're connected to it and their friends are and their support, that's great. They don't work together real well. My work with addiction was because my oldest son was an addict. He had a problem with alcohol and with opiates. And I put him in, before I started doing any addiction work, I put him in a rehab. The first one was $28,000 that I had to write them a check for. And he was there for 28 days. And he's a really smart guy. He is just brilliant. And he told me why it's not going to work. He says, we're just being housed there. We're just being babysat. They're feeding us terrible food. We have one meeting a day. We talk about all our troubles, and we're not allowed to listen to music. There's nothing positive that happens there. And it's the most mind-numbing, dull, boring time where we get to talk about how bad we are as people. And then when he was leaving that one, he and a few other men, he said, the director told us, he said, remember that in 30 days, only 1 in 12 of you will still be clean and sober. Wow. That's hypnosis. That's putting an expectation, having them projected into their future 1 month from now, that is going to be clean money.
Hmm. So it sounds almost like the rehab program is just like one step off of just going to jail. Maybe you can get some help in jail, you know? Huh.
Yeah. Yeah. And in the 1930s, they invented this program, the AA program, and That's all they had, and great. But now we know how the brain works, and we know the science behind how to make change in your brain and so much more. It's such a bigger thing now than it ever has been for understanding the science of how we make changes.
So is your work primarily in person, or do you do online work now too with people?
Well, a little of both. After this many years, I don't have an office where I see clients anymore. I speak to groups, and I travel, and I have some private clients who will fly Zoom or on my locals channel. And then we do some groups that way as well.
Because I'm just thinking, I know a loved one that struggles with alcoholism, and this might be something that, would be good for them.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Could be worth a try. And you can take a look at it and then, just send a note to your friend, your loved one, and say, hey, they listen to my video and stuff. And it's that positive feeling like, wow, maybe it's not my fault that I can't make it work. Now this is a different approach.
So is there any difference between like alcohol or drugs in terms of what you need to do with hypnosis?
We look at it the same way. And even with other problems that you have, let's say you have maybe a phobia about driving, and you've just, for some reason, some things happened that made you have this uncontrollable anxiety and fear, and you're just hyperventilating when you drive, and you just had to quit driving. What we want to do first is release that anxiety about that and find out what happened in the past that might have caused it. But more important is that taking that person into the future, when they're driving, when their hand on the steering wheel feels comfortable and good, then they're really enjoying the day. The trees are beautiful. The breeze is perfect. And we have an experience where they're really feeling like, wow, driving is easy. So now when they decide they're going to go for a ride and see how their driving is, at least they've got this future memory in their brain that holds all the elements, physically, emotionally, energetically, all those elements that are about them being a good driver and being relaxed. That's a short explanation, but with most things, if we can get them into that future, even with athletes, to make them have a better golf game or whatever sport they have, we need to take them into that body and mind and experience it of the future self that is successful at this.
Well, I think your primary technique within the hypnosis is NLP, the Neuro-Linguistic Programming, right?
Right. I combine the two I don't do them separately, but I combine the two so that we're getting the best of all the techniques in there.
So you can do NLP outside of hypnosis too, because I like NLP. The first time I heard of that was with Tony Robbins, that he does NLP.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've been to a lot of his workshops back 20 years ago or so. I really enjoyed learning a lot from him. What was interesting though is in one of the really big workshops I was at, where there were like 2,000 people, he had everybody close their eyes, take a deep breath. And then he did this process that I've used a lot, which is a future timeline, which is kind of an NLP process. But he was using these words that were my words, which was really interesting because they were about half of this future timeline was like my words, word for word. And I was like, yay, oh, huh? But anyway, maybe he was inspired to use that future timeline as a hypnosis process, combining the NLP and the hypnosis together. But yeah, he's very, very good at what he does. But I don't think he should be your guru, because if you've been to any of his events, you know that there is a lot of hypnotic work to implant your desire to buy more and spend more and be very devoted to him. And I recognize it because I'm an expert at this, but other people would just feel like, oh my God, I have to have everything he does.
And
But
so
he taught me a lot, so I'm grateful.
so you do with other issues too, like porn addiction and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah, the first client I had for porn addiction, I thought, oh, there's no way. I don't know what I would do to help him with that. Plus, it's, it's a subject area that's like, oh God. So this man had been in the Mormon church for all of his adult life. And he tried to get help everywhere he could. And back then we didn't have computers, so it was porn addiction, through magazines and stuff. But now when I was working with him, he had a computer. And so the computer was a problem because it's always available. But I worked with him, and after about 3 or 4 sessions, he said, just like you said in our sessions, when I see that computer, when I walk by the computer, I look at it and it makes me feel that I am a really good man. And I know I don't need that anymore because that is in my past and it's not a part of my life. And I really am proud of who I am now. So that's a simplified explanation. And since then, I've worked with many porn addicts, and I have a recorded program for that as well. But they get to experience themselves as being free from it, finally not having to think about it and be obsessed with it, and changing the thing that is the trigger. In this case, well, the anchor was a computer. The anchor triggers the feelings, needs, desires, addiction, bad habits, changing that to trigger something totally different. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. And is there more of an issue with porn addiction because it's more accessible because of the internet and things like that today? Has there been an increase in it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's really a shame because so many men just have so much anger at themselves and feel like they just can't disconnect themselves from it. Because of course a sex drive is, a big part of our lives, and it's supposed to be. But yeah, I've helped a lot of men change that feeling back to finding a relationship or getting back in a sexual relationship with their wife or girlfriend, and using the pathways that our body and soul wants, which is to find that companionship that's true and real. So when that desire is there, we let that just dissolve out of their, thought process and bring in what kind of person they are now, what kind of man they are now.
What do you think motivates porn addiction? Is it a lot of it just escapism? Or what do you think is really?
I think it's because of our sex drive. A sex drive is supposed to be overwhelming and make it so that you can't resist, because that's how our species continues. And I think that we are made that way on purpose. But it's fueled by it being so accessible and having an addictive component to it, because the porn sites are always trying to intrigue you and make you think there's something better and bigger and something even more titillating and more exciting. And so they have to keep you looking for more and ramping it up, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. So is there any difference between how you would sort of change the programming with a porn addiction as versus alcohol or drugs?
It's very similar, actually. We want to, first of all, dissolve those old feelings. Doesn't mean we're deleting them. We're just going to dissolve them in a way that they're not the thing that's in the front of your mind and in your thoughts all day. So if I were going to work on this with a client, I would maybe ask them to, they're relaxed, their eyes are closed. I want you just to view, as if from a distance, some of the experiences you've had when you couldn't resist watching porn. So just go back and notice them from an observer point, and notice those things that you've done. You might even see yourself in that scenario, and just notice how you feel when you are looking at or imagining yourself being totally hooked into the porn and you feel like you can't stop. And then what I would do next is I'm going to take all of those visuals, the sounds, the feelings I had, and put them into something like a framework so that they can see them all, almost like they're looking at them on a TV set. But I don't want them to think about a TV set, but just look at all of those. Now make them a little bit fuzzy, remembering who you want to be and what kind of man you know that you can be. And they get a little fuzzier. And now make them a little farther away. And then let the color dissolve out of all those images and let them become just smaller and smaller and smaller. And as they get smaller, notice that the feeling you have about the man that you know you are and you want to be is getting stronger. And as they dissolve and get smaller and smaller, just like that, it's gone. Take a deep breath and then you let that go because that's not who you are anymore. So now I'm going to immediately build a new scenario. So I might ask them to create another screen in front of them as if it's a TV screen or a movie screen, and put some things on there that represent who you are now as a man who loves your body. You love your sex drive, but you also love sharing that with a real person. And this is who you are now. And being able to share that person who makes your life feel fulfilled and happy and strong. So anyway, then we have them build all of that in that screen, and then they step into it and they feel it, experience it. And then I'm telling them about what they want and say, this is your true nature, to be a man of honor, a man you're proud of. When you look in the mirror, someone that you see and you really like who he's becoming. And you enjoy your relationships and things like that, so getting them to be immersed in that experience. And that in itself, that process, that one could be enough to do the job. But sometimes they need a little more. There might be some childhood issues that cause this to happen. There might be some guilt or some anger or some really horrible situations that happen. And a lot of children have been sexually molested, and that has a big component of porn addiction as well.
Well, I kind of heard like a similarity to that. And sometimes in mindfulness, they talk about step outside yourself and objectively observe yourself and just sort of let whatever this is, if it's anxiety or whatever issue, exists right there and just kind of observe it. And it sort of takes the power away. But then you're taking it one step further and saying, imagine something better, so a different picture of what it could be.
That's a great explanation. You really are perceptive, because that is what we're doing. So we're taking you out of it. But if you only did that, if you only said, okay, now, that's not who you are anymore, but you didn't build the person they are, you didn't reconnect them with who they truly are and who they want to be, then what would happen? They would have a bit of emptiness, and they would have a lack of direction and not feeling grounded in their life. So we've got to get them into that mindset of who they want to be. And I would say that most of my work is so successful for people, even just with the recorded programs, because I am taking them into those future moments. No matter what your issue is, I'm going to take you to that time where you solve that problem. You're a different person. You've gotten rid of that fear or whatever it is. And then I have you imagine looking back on, let's say you're 6 months in the future, and I have you looking back on the last 6 months and just realizing what it was like and how you experienced yourself, and what a relief it is now to know that all of that is behind you and you have something so much bigger in your life.
So you deal with a lot with traumas too, then? Do you deal with like, you mentioned like sexual abuse in the past and things like that?
Yeah. And if people have been sexually abused as children, they really need to see someone in person who is an expert at that. You don't want to let someone who's new at hypnotherapy or NLP do work in that area, because it is a very, very important but delicate area of knowing exactly how to heal it. And healing trauma is so important. Definitely something we need to look at. There's specific methods for helping someone who's had child sexual abuse. For the therapist, it is a pretty intense experience to lead someone through it in a way that's going to help them heal. Because for a lot of us, it touches or pushes a lot of buttons, because you have to remain kind of neutral, compassionate, understanding, but yet the things that are being described to you from their past might be pretty horrific and disturbing. And I mean, in a strangely different way, one of my clients was a child sex abuser, and he wanted to quit. I was like, oh boy, woo. I didn't really want to do that work because I thought this is just too icky. But then I thought, well, how many children am I going to save from him in the future, molesting children? So I did the work with him, and we did a lot of sessions, and whew, what a change. His life just changed, and he felt really solid and could trust himself. He said, I'm still not going to interact with kids, and I'm not going to strike up conversations or anything, but I know I don't feel like I want to do that now. And I feel like I can trust myself, and that compulsion isn't there anymore. Oh boy, but that was a tough one.
So when someone comes in for help, whether it's alcohol, drugs, or pornography or something like that, what is usually like the timeline to start to recover? Is it something where you get a little bit like the first session, but it's going to take a few months or whatever to fully recover?
Yeah, it really depends on what the situation is. Generally, I start working with someone from 4 to 6 sessions if I'm working with them in person. Because we don't even know, and I don't set their expectations that, okay, we're going to be just done at this point. I say, let's do the first 6 sessions and see what happens, and where you'll be. You might be completely good and ready to go, or there might be some more things that we've uncovered that we need to resolve. Because you never know. I had a meth client who wanted help, and we worked together for probably 10 sessions, but I let him know that, meth is a tough one, and we want to make sure that we completely get you free from it and solid and just really good. And there's some other traumatic things that we don't know about until we get to working with a client. We may not know because they've suppressed it, that there was some kind of abuse or some really horrific event in their life that just came up in their memories with the hypnotherapy.
So in terms of like, have you seen any miracles or anything like that in terms of what you do that was really amazing?
Yeah, so many. And all hypnotherapists have seen a lot of miracles and things that medically they've been given up on. One of my clients was a woman. She was about 65 years old. For 2 years, she had been unresponsive. So she was at her house in a hospital bed, and her 2 adult daughters took care of her. And she hadn't moved her body in 2 years. The only thing she could do was blink, and the dog bend or move any of her body. So I went in there, and I came back every Monday, and I worked with Martha every Monday. And the first time I just told her a story, what I saw in my mind, I just described this story, and this blanket and a beautiful grassy meadow and a little stream and this trail, and described all the details of it, which after that first session, right then, nothing changed, but her daughters said, how did you know? And I said, know what? And they said, that's the place that we went, my mom and both of us. And what you said about making little daisy chain flowers, that's what we did there. And that stream, that's where we'd play in. And I was just describing what I was seeing. But anyway, next week on Monday, I went in and Martha's eyebrows raised when I came in. She was still lying there still, but her eyebrows went up. Whoa, that was amazing. And then I talked about her fingers and her hands because they had been clenched for 2 years. And I would touch her fingers and I would say, this finger is made of Play-Doh. It's soft and it moves and it's red Play-Doh. This one is green Play-Doh. And I did this with both of her arms and hands. And then the next week when I came in, her hands were flexible and they could move. And no doctor was able to figure out how to get her to have any ability to move or respond. So now I touched one of her fingers on the right hand and I said, this finger is yes. This means yes. I want you to lift this, which really was supposed to be impossible. And she lifted the finger. I was like, yay. And then I said, this finger on your left hand. And as I touched it, I said, when you lift that one, it means no. She's in there. So now her daughters, when they take care of her, they can ask her questions and she can say yes or no. I mean, even things like, are you cold right now? Or you need, whatever. So we got to the point where Martha's entire body was able to be flexed. She could sit up. She had facial expressions. She couldn't talk. But because her body was flexible now, they could put her in a wheelchair and take her places, take her outside, and take her in the car and do things with her, which was really cool. And it was a miracle because I had no idea how I was going to do something she had been in this condition and the doctors gave up. But anyway, yeah, that's one of my best ones. I was so pleased to see her doing that and having quality of life.
So is it possible with hypnotherapy to heal from certain medical conditions? Like if you had high blood pressure, could you help with high blood pressure through hypnotherapy?
Yeah, and hypnotherapists know a lot about how you work with medical conditions. We don't claim to cure any of them because curing is a medical term. We do help alleviate many conditions. High blood pressure is often the result of a lot of current stress in your life, but also past events in your life that might have triggered that when you get a little bit stressed, your blood pressure goes up, and it goes up at times when you're not expecting it, but something subconsciously is making it go up. So we get your brain to monitor the high blood pressure, to keep it at the optimum level, and doing this with hypnosis. And that any time that your subconscious mind notices your blood pressure going up, it brings it right back to the healthiest level. And a lot of things like that we can alleviate. So when you have given up hope in a medical area of your life, and even medication isn't helping, like this woman that had migraines every Thursday, they were so bad that she couldn't do anything for the whole day. And she'd tried for years to get help. She even gave herself injections every day, but they didn't help. Sometimes we need to understand that there's a cause. So when I was working with her in our trance session, I said, go back to the very first time that you noticed this feeling in your brain, the thing that you experience every Thursday. Just go back to the very first time. So now this is something that medically nobody's going to look for. It's not something that a doctor is going to try to, dig around and find. So sitting in that chair, all of a sudden she couldn't breathe. And it was like somebody, like she was absolutely not breathing. Her mouth was open and she was gasping, going, and trying to breathe. And I said, on the count of 3, and I was freaking out a little bit as well, because I was like, oh no. So I said, on the count of 3, you stay in that moment, in that memory. When I touch your shoulder, you'll be able to breathe. And I went 1, 2, 3. Now, right now, just feel me touching your shoulder. And she took deep breaths. I said, okay, now just bring yourself back to a relaxed state and tell me what's happening while you breathe easily and gently. And she says, my husband has his hands around my neck and he's trying to kill me. He's trying to strangle me and I can't breathe. And this really happened. And she remembered it consciously, but she never connected it to the migraines. And after we worked through that trauma, then I said, what day of the week is it? And she said, oh, it's Thursday. So every Thursday she had a migraine because her subconscious was having that fear.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, she had no more migraines. And that was also several sessions. It wasn't just one session. But oh my gosh, to release that trauma for her, oh, her life totally changed, because now she doesn't have to live with that underlying fear all the time.
Could it be like in terms of stress to where, maybe on a surface level, I feel very relaxed and calm, don't feel like I have any problems, but maybe at a subconscious level, there is some kind of stress that you're dealing with, but you're just not recognizing it at a conscious level. And you would get to it with hypnotherapy.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And that's why hypnotherapists are so successful, because you don't know what it is that you're dealing with below your consciousness, below your conscious day-to-day thoughts, because those memories are either old memories or they're too uncomfortable. Why would my migraine client want to think about that horrific experience? She shoved it down and shoved it down, and it keeps coming up because it's still such a trauma. But yeah, you're right. There's a lot of things that it gets so weird when you're a hypnotherapist. Like a woman she was an adult in her 20s, and whenever she went to the doctor, she'd faint. And they'd tried everything for years to get her to not faint. When she goes to the doctor, she would just collapse and faint. And this was a tough one. I worked with her quite a bit, but we got to a memory when she was born. And when she was born, she passed out, and they had to take her really quickly out of the birthing room into the emergency, try to resuscitate her. And she didn't know that this had happened. But in our session, she was telling me what was happening, what was going on, describing these people in the room who were working on her, which was pretty interesting. When we worked on that, we released the trauma of that and had her create a different belief about having a healthy birth and being able to breathe, and being able to have doctors help her and give her whatever help she needed. But anyway, she never fainted at the doctor after that. Never. But the weird thing was, do we really remember birth? Are we really able to store those memories? Are they not memories in our brain? Are they non-local memories that are somewhere in the ethers? And I don't know, but she went home and told her mom the people that were in that room and described them. And the mom said, that's exactly who was in that room. And those are the doctors and the nurses.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, yeah, we have some weird experiences that are really hard to explain.
So do you deal a lot with anxiety and depression in general, and issues of self-confidence?
Yeah, and all of those, yeah. And hypnotherapists regularly do issues of depression, and especially anxiety. That's a big one. And those just take a personal approach to find out what a person's issues are and what caused that and what created it, resolving that.
What is like the connection between hypnosis and meditation?
Yeah, great question. Because meditation is relax your mind and body and focusing on what you want and giving yourself that time to get your body really peaceful physically, mentally, emotionally. And you're meditating with kind of a freedom of thought. You don't have to think about anything, imagine anything. And then you're like emptying your mind, emptying your body. So you're not focusing on something that you want to feel or that you would be creating some skill or some ability. It's more of an emptying your mind and feeling that really sense, that deep sense of peace. And hypnosis is kind of the opposite in some ways, because you are focusing specifically on something you do want. So if you're a golfer, for instance, you're focusing on, in your mind, you're at this tournament and it's been going so well and your swing is so beautiful and the air is so perfect today. And the feeling you have in your body of knowing you can trust yourself and that your inner mind knows exactly how to make that shot. Everything you need is already there. And so we're creating it, we're creating all the details that we can. So it's kind of the opposite.
So do you do self-hypnosis on yourself? Can self-hypnosis work, or is it always better with another person in terms of hypnotherapy?
Well, once you're good at it, you can do it on yourself. If you are really good at it, if you've trained yourself and you've learned from someone who's really good at it. For me, after I did my hypnotherapy school 28 years ago, and I did it was like a 6-month-long school. It was 4 days a week, so it was pretty intensive. I was struggling with a lot of issues, particularly with money and depression and such. So I did my self-hypnosis on taking myself on a path into my future. And on that path, I was going to go to many different points in my future and experience them. And it would be with the intention of creating success, helping a lot of people, increasing my confidence in this, and creating, a lot of money and happiness and joy for people. So I went on this path, and partway on this path, all of a sudden this huge rock wall came up, and it stopped me because it was really big. And I was not intending for that to happen and represent themselves metaphorically. So this big wall, while I'm just lying there by myself, this big wall says, I asked the wall, I said, "Why are you there?" And the wall wrote on it, it said, "Your father." I thought, that's weird because I did not, create that. And I said, "What do you mean? Why are you my father?" And it said, because I was focusing specifically on wealth at that moment in that timeline. It said, "If you make more money than your father, he'll be devastated." The wall told me that. And I understood it because he had a thing about women, he's old, really old school, women in success and stuff. So I tore down the wall. I kept going. And the short version of this is that I went 1 year into the future. And at 1 year into the future, my business had done $1 million in sales they were cassette tapes at the time. Because we couldn't make CDs very easily then. So these cassette tape sets I'd make and I'd mail them out. And that I had made $1 million in sales. I had written a book. Who knew? And then there were all these people there that were grateful. And it was not just me saying, "Oh, I made money and I wrote a book." It was all these people who were so grateful for the work I had done in the last year. And that's what my mind keyed in on, that loved the most about that future moment was, wow, I helped a lot of people and I changed a lot of lives and I did an amazing job. So anyway, I take myself back on that timeline with all the information and all the wisdom and all the changes in my life, back to the present moment. My depression cleared up. My hopelessness was gone. I was like, I'm going to write a book. I wonder what that's going to be about. But I did. I wrote a book called Hypnotize Your Lover. The reason I did is because the most emails I got with questions from people back in the day, 28 years ago, was about sex. And so I wrote a book that included all those email responses to them about improving their sex life with hypnosis. But 1 year later, I had sold $1,012,000.
Wow.
It's almost exactly the 1 million, just a little bit over. And It's mind-boggling to me that that could happen to almost the exact amount. Oh, and the other thing in that future was that I would open the door to my beautiful house. In that same week, 1 year later, it was August, the first week in August, in that same week, 1 year later, they handed me the keys to a beautiful house that I bought, opened the door, and it all happened. It's quite something, the power that we have when we change our programming, our negative programming, the things that are holding us back and the things that we don't even know that we're doing to sabotage ourselves. Then you have the freedom to do something that you love and be good at it and help a lot of people.
Was that similar to like the law of attraction, where if you have a strong enough of belief, there is sort of a metaphysical reality where you start drawing it in? Do you believe in the law of attraction?
Well, I do. Of course, the law of attraction, if you think about that in terms of what I experienced at 1 year in the future, I was creating something that I now was going to attract, which was a lot of happy clients who loved my work, who loved my book, who were part of my life. So yes, but had I not gotten over my issues, there was more issues than just that wall representing my father, but that was one of them. There were a lot of other issues that were self-sabotage, and I had to work on those as well. So we do something called parts therapy, and I did this on myself as well. And it was that a part of you wants you to fail, part of you wants you to be depressed, a part of you wants to totally shut down. So I was a single mom because I'd had a divorce and my kids were little, and I'd get them to school and then I'd come home and lie down on the couch for hours because I was feeling totally hopeless. But all of those things get transformed when we want to look at what the positive reason is for them. It doesn't sound like there would be a positive reason for being depressed or for not being able to get off the couch, but we ask that part of ourselves. So if I was doing that, I'd say, where in my body is there a part of me that wants me to be depressed, that wants me to be sad or angry? Where is that part? And then let that part tell me what it needs. What is the positive reason why you have this depression or why you don't want to get off the couch, why you feel hopeless? And we let the part tell us, and that brings us so much information about what the hidden agenda is or what's really keeping us stuck.
Do you have like a daily routine that you yourself do, connected to NLP or hypnosis? Do you do any meditation or anything?
Well, I do, like in the morning, I want to start my morning with something that is positive. What do I want to create today? And what do I want to feel? It's not just your accomplishments. It's not like, I want to make $10,000 today. That's money. That's something that has come to you that's good and we need it, but that isn't what you're manifesting. That's not what your law of attraction should be trying for. Your law of attraction, first of all, you've got to get rid of the issues that are holding you back. But then you look at, are you manifesting that you're going to make a whole bunch of money? That you're going to have a big old sports car? Or what are you manifesting? Those are not the things. Your law of attraction needs to be that I am wanting to assist people in having a better life, getting them out of pain and fear, and to be the thing that helps people live a better life and have gratitude for who they are.
So like in terms of your work, what are you most passionate about? What do you get most excited about in hypnotherapy and NLP work?
For me, it's the work with addiction, because my addiction clients feel completely hopeless. They have failed so many times. They're sure that nothing will work. They've been told that AA is the only way, and they've been trying that for years and it doesn't work. So they think, I am just a failure. I just can't do this. So I've taken people who are very, very hopeless and brought them to having a wonderful, rewarding, sober life without drugs, without alcohol, but doing it by feeling good not by feeling bad about themselves and not being in fear anymore. And I've done this with people with my recorded program that has many sessions on it, because we got to cover a lot with addiction. And people all over the world have used this, and even without my assistance, they do so well. And they send me their stories and tell me how good their lives are. And it's more than just quitting your addiction. It's about building a life that gives you something really rewarding that you love.
So where can people reach you if they want to, get in contact with you or access some of your programs and things?
Yeah, just go to wendi.com. It's WENDI.com. And when you go there, you'll see a lot of topics. You just go to the area that says, see all the courses. But there's a big introduction from me. There's free things as well, too. You can get a lot of free programs that will get you started and experience what a big change it can make for you with hypnotherapy.
And so is there like one final word you'd like to leave with the audience?
Yeah, and it is that if you're feeling completely hopeless, you've failed at anything, at any part of your life, or maybe you just can't get over the pain of a divorce or a breakup or something that's just keeping you stuck, there is a way to get past it. Your conscious mind doesn't know how, but when you change your subconscious mind, your inner mind, and you allow yourself to find those things that are holding you back, the changes are huge, and it's really worth doing the work. It's not hard to do, and it's so rewarding for you to find the changes and feel that, wow, this is a totally different life now. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming on today. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This is great. Hopefully we can reach a lot of people and help a lot of people feel better.